you'll see in the movies, I hate to bring, because that's what most people associate with submarines. You'll see in the movies there's a flood in the submarine, and the guys jump in the water and they start trying to block the hole and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, to hell with that. The submarines we've always had are not big enough to control that. If we lose even one of the watertight compartments, we cannot return to the surface. We don't have enough power with propulsion, and we don't have enough high pressure air to create enough buoyancy. So if we were to lose a compartment because of flooding, we're staying underwater. The next option would be to escape. So as soon as someone says flood, someone like us, even in the old days, we didn't wait for an officer, I don't wait for the captain to order it, I surface the submarine, I open high pressure air valves. As soon as I hear that, someone holler that, or I get an alarm, bang, boom, I blow it right away because I want to get up there as quick as possible to stop it from completely flooding. So the alarms get set off by little float bells throughout the boat. We got manual alarms all throughout the boat, and then anyone can just pipe it. And like I said, without the captain saying anything, without the officer saying anything, we go up to the surface. To move water throughout the submarine, to get the compensation in the trim right. So just like if you were scuba diving to let more air in or out of your buoyancy compensator, he would also tell them how to maintain the hydraulic systems on board and how to operate the air systems. Once again, that's changed. We got rid of the officer, and now we do that job. So instead of someone telling me how to trim the submarine, I have a big console all of us sit in front of, and we just do what we need to do. They monitor us, but now they're starting to lose that expertise they used to have. As the new guys come in who have never been on an Oberon, they've never actually trimmed a submarine, and we've essentially become the experts now. To us, where we can't, triangulate and hear the propellers, it's masked by that. So things like that we can't hear. So if we're at periscope depth, we always want to be looking for something like that jumping out at us. Weather conditions, we're looking for aircraft going over us, and then if we're seeing escort, sea kings falling out of the sky, stuff like that. Normally the only time we spend at periscope depth would be to run the engines, to snort. Once we were done that, unless we were waiting or doing an operation where it required it, we go back down to what we call safe depth. It used to be about 180 feet on these things. And that's just a calculated depth based on all the NATO information you have from all the other countries of where they're operating their submarines. You'd say, well, we're going to operate ours here. America would say, we're going to operate ours here. The British say, we're going to operate ours here. So we know we'd have our own zone. And also based on the depth of any draft of any ship that would be operating in that area.
And so when you head up to the surface to snort, how far below are you?
What was it on
the keel depth is 17.5 meters.
Yeah, so
you're maybe a meter. The top of the fin might be a meter.
Meter under the water, yeah. There are normally 7 to 10 officers on board. Yeah. Of course, wardroom, so you'll have safes in here where they kept a lot of the confidential stuff. The captain has his own cabin, which was a little separate. To call it a cabin is a little misleading because it's the walk-in closet in my bedroom's bigger.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, you just learned to duck and weave where my brain is entrenched on where to go. You don't spend a lot of time standing up on board. You were sitting down watching movies, sitting down on watch, or walking through the spaces doing your rounds. So a lot of people mention that, but geez, you're too tall, but you don't really walk around a whole bunch.
Is this just for quick access? Or?
No, there used to be, I think, ventilation trunking running through there, and they pulled it out. On the other side of there is the sound room, the sonar guys. So they could also communicate through them real quick if they had a contact that they wanted to get to the wardroom right away. Get some information.
Ken, how did you get to be a submariner? If you went into the Canadian Navy, how did you end up, well, back in the day when you were...
My dad was in the Navy. He just retired a few years ago. He did 37 years. And he was always on ships. And I remember I was probably about 12 or 13, and I was down working with him on one of the 280s that he was posted to. And we walked by this boat, the OJIBWA, and I bugged him because my dad hated submarines. And most skimmers, the surface guys, they do. They got no use for them. They're a pain in their butt. So I bugged my dad, please, can we go take a look? Can we go take a look? So my dad walked over the hatch and hollered down, and this guy that was about 4'1" showed up and said, can you take my son down for a quick tour? And at that point I was like, wow, this is really neat. I joined the Navy in 1989 as a marine engineer, technician, or at that time mechanic. Was interested, but not quite sure, right? You're always a little apprehensive about jumping off the cliff. Did my initial engineering training, mentioned it to one of my instructors that I'd be interested. Went to my first ship, the HMCS Ottawa, the old steamer. I was there for about 6 months, and then I got handed a message from my engineering officer, and saying that I had been selected for submarine service as a non-volunteer. Basically because I, mentioned it to my instructor back then, and never really looked back. It's a small, what we call small boat or small unit mentality. The guys that are in charge of the whole submarine community now are guys that I either trained or trained with back when I was younger. I know them all, and all the new guys coming in, I mean, it's still the same guys, like they know me now. It's a very tight-knit community, and I've always liked that, whereas when I was sailing on the ship, the only guys I knew were the engineers. There was always animosity between the operations department and the engineering department and the combat department and the other. I didn't like that much. On here, I don't care if you're a sonar operator or you're a full-fledged technician. We're all submariners. We're all on the same team. I really like that mindset. And the whole elitist thing and all that when you're younger looks pretty cool. It feels you're in the Navy, yeah, but you belong to at the time you think a better team or a more elite team and all that kind of stuff.
But submariners express an interest in becoming a submariner. The selection process.
Yeah.
I mean, do people
back then you had to do a psychological evaluation, psychiatric evaluation. The old joke used to be if you got selected as a non-volunteer, you would go into the office, and the first thing you do is sit down and say, "Can you open up all the windows, please? I'm a little claustrophobic. This office is a little tight for me." And then they put no.
Yeah.
And what does this ink plot look like? And it looks like everyone dying, or it looks like this and so. There's always jokes about guys doing that, but you got in there and you just basically express why you wanted to go, and then you do your pressure test. There's a pressure vessel over in a diving chamber over in FDU over in Dartmouth, and it's basically a big capsule, and then they pressurize it with air to simulate you going down in depth, and then make sure you don't have any holes in your teeth that are going to make your fillings explode, that you can equalize your ears and all that kind of stuff. I've never actually heard of that happen, but I have, of the teeth actually exploding, but I have heard of guys like complaining when they're going down, it's, "Oh, I got a big pain in my," and that's what it is. They'd fill a cavity. You did?
Yeah, I had an air pocket in it.
Yeah, so you got an air pocket after they fill the cavity.
Somebody punched me in the face.
So when you go down in pressure, that pocket would be exposed to it, and it would hurt like hell.
Oh boy.
Because we try and run at atmospheric pressure almost all the time, right? When we dive, we mark the barometer to say, okay, when we dove, it was at this pressure. But every time you vent a tank inboard, the pressure would increase inside the submarine, or every time you drew some air out of the boat, the pressure would go down. And when we're snorting, when we're running the engines underwater, we've got one mast up to bring the air down, another mast up to put the exhaust out. But if the submarine went deep a little bit or a big wave came over it, the engines are drawing all their air from inside the submarine. So it'd be like on an airplane that just took a big nosedive. Your ears would start popping. So you'd be trying to sleep and you'd be like, get up off watch and complain of who was driving the boat, saying, I didn't get any sleep because I got a bit of a head cold and I was being woke up every 10 minutes by my ear getting sucked, or my brain getting sucked out of my ear. Every hatch was my first trip on the OJIBWA, the outboard one there, the chief engineer took me into the engine room, made me stand under the engine room hatch as we were surfacing because the spring on the hatch was weak, and he knew that when we surfaced, if we had a big pressure in the boat, that the hatch was going to pop. So he said, "Stand there, ordinary seaman." I said, "Okay, chief." He stood there, and the submarine surfaced. The submarine pressure popped the hatch, and the ocean came in and poured all over me. We thought it was hilarious. Him and I never got along for the next 20 years of my career. Anyway, you guys want to go on board? Yeah.